Good afternoon, everybody, dear friends, colleagues, excellencies. It is a special honor and pleasure for me to be here this afternoon in my capacity as head of mission at the Austrian Embassy in Baghdad to moderate this panel with His Excellency, Deputy Prime Minister of the Kurdistan Regional Government, Mr. Kubat Talabani. I think he's well known to all of you. And the topic we are discussing today is, I believe, very pertinent and interesting. Centralization or decentralization. But the answer to that, I believe, should be centralization and decentralization, mutually complementing and, let's say, enhancing each other. So I will go straight to a very pertinent, up-to-date topic, which is about the Federation Council. I know that His Excellency, Deputy Prime Minister Talabani, has been involved in drafting the Iraqi constitution, and the Federal Council is provided for by this constitution. So what is your vision about this important organ, which represents both the decentralizing element in the sense that it represents the provinces and the regions, but at the same time it's a federal institution, so it represents centralization?
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you to Dr. Dlauer and the MERI Forum, and thank you all for your participation and engagement and all of the esteemed panelists until now. And I was interested because at many points throughout this conference, this forum, the topic of federalism has come up, including the final question in the last panel by Bayan Khan, which was a kind of a nice coordinated segue into this panel. So why the Federal Council? Why was this put into the Constitution in the first place? Because when the Constitution was being negotiated, there was a imbalance, and we wanted to avoid the rule of the majority over the minority. We had to find ways to protect the rights of the minority. Now, whether that's an ethnic minority, whether it's a regional minority, whether it's a religious minority. So one way that was really designed to create checks and balances in the system was to create the Federal Council, where the Council of Representatives has a proportional system based on the size of the province, based on the number of seats allocated to the province, based on its population. And if that were the case, in a country as diverse as Iraq, and you wanted to apply democratic principles in terms of putting things to a vote, then it's quite clear how things will always turn out. So you need another organ, another institution that can create a check against the misrule of the majority, and to create a rule of law and an equality without creating obstacles.
This is a very good point, I believe. So the Federal Council can actually be a way for the governorates and the regions to have a stronger stake in the federal system and actually a stronger ownership of it. Speaking in that context, what kind of composition do you envisage? So equal participation by each governorate, some kind of proportional participation according to the population. Have you given any thought to this aspect, based also on what is on the table right now?
Again, you have to go back to the intent behind the creation. If we create another body that is proportional to the size of the province, or proportional based on the population of the province, then we haven't achieved the objective. We've created another body that will give added power to the rule of the majority. So in my opinion, we need this body to have equal representation. Every province in the country, whether it's Halabja or whether it's Basra, needs to have, in my opinion, the same number of representatives on that federal council.
Like the Senate in the United States.
Like the Senate in the United States. I mean, again, it's the whole point of the Senate in the United States is this bicameral system is to create checks and balances. And yes, it can be frustrating, and yes, sometimes you can block things, and yes, sometimes the majority will say, well, I got the most votes in the elections, but that's in a country with the diversity that Iraq has, that is not the effective way to govern.
And in terms of the nature or the procedure of nomination, you would envisage appointed representatives or elected representatives?
I think it's better to have elected representatives. One, it keeps politics interesting. Right? It'll make elections more interesting.
It's important.
Right?
Certainly.
Not that politics is ever boring in this country.
True, but
we pray for boring here. We'd much rather have a boring life than the chaos that we currently have. But I think elections is probably a more fairer way. And again, it doesn't have to be. Again, in the U.S., it's every 6 years you have. It doesn't necessarily have to run parallel to the elections of the House of Representatives or the Council of Representatives. It can be a different model, but it is essential to have a equitable governing platform that gives regional, religious, ethnic minorities equal rights in the country.
That's a very good point. You just built a bridge to the other important component of the federal system, which is the regional level. We have it uniquely so far in the Kurdistan region in Iraq, but theoretically the constitution envisages the forming of regions through different provinces, but when different provinces come together. Now, of course, you mentioned elections, democratic ownership at the regional and provincial level. It is clear that for this democratic ownership to achieve its full effect, both in terms of empowering the electorate, but also as a stabilizing factor on the whole system, it has to go hand in hand with the constitutional development in the region of Kurdistan. So what is your take on the status quo, on the state of play in terms of regional constitution, especially when it comes to the division of competencies between the regional government and the governorate authorities? Thank you.
It's tied, it's connected. First of all, Kurdistan is not independent, it's part of Iraq. Iraq has a constitution that we've heard throughout this past few days. The constitution has questions, has ambiguities, has laws that have still not been passed to fill the gaps that exist in the constitution. The constitution defines Iraq as a federal country, but as we heard from the remarks of the president of the Kurdistan region, it's not really being applied in the spirit that the constitution was drafted in. As he rightly said, there may be areas where Kurdistan as a region has exceeded its federal authorities, and there are other areas where Baghdad's engagement with us is anything but a federal engagement. So coming to a framework, coming to an understanding on how this country should be governed, not ruled, governed.
Indeed.
And I think this is the essence of why federalism. Everyone talks about federalism and decentralization until they come to power. When they come to power and they realize, this chair is kind of nice, and I like the authority that this chair provides me, then why should I devolve power? Because centralism will not work in Iraq, has not worked in Iraq. Centralism can only work in Iraq if Iraq once again becomes a dictatorship. This country is too diverse. There are too many different groups, too many different ethnicities, too many religious communities, too many different political ideologies. I cannot think of another country that has the level of complexities that Iraq has, and that there is no way a centralized government can manage this beautiful chaos,
Indeed.
right? Unless it's a firm grip and a dictatorship, and there are probably many in this country that would like to be that firm grip and dictatorship, but The whole point of liberating Iraq from tyranny in 2003, the whole point of the engagement of the international community back then, the war that led to so many deaths and such destruction, was to remove a dictatorship and put in place a better, more fair, more equitable system of governance. It has long been our belief that federalism is the answer. Now, what kind of federalism? Germany's federal model, Austria's federal model, Australia's federal model, the UAE's model. There are thousands of models, symmetric, asymmetric federations that we can learn from and apply. I don't think there is a particular model that we can cut and paste and apply to Kurdistan and say, okay, that's it, let's be like Austria. Let's be like Germany. It's just not realistic. But this has to come down to a basic understanding of citizenship. If I'm an Iraqi citizen, okay, how do I make sure my rights are protected? How do I make sure I have a say? How do I build loyalty to a country? And how do I then contribute? What are my rights within that system? What are my obligations within that system? And that applies on an individual level, that applies on a political level, and applies on a regional level. And that's what this constitution was designed to do, but it hasn't been implemented effectively. Now, you talked about a Kurdistan's constitution. We too need a constitution in Kurdistan that designs the administrative model so we can govern more effectively here. Because right now we have a combination of both a centralized system of governance here and a decentralized system of governance, and they're contradicting each other. We have a region actually roughly the size of Austria, with about 6 million plus people. Minister of Planning, help me, right? 6.1 million. But we have this really complex system of governance. We have a presidency, we have the Council of Ministers, with all of the ministers in this council. All of these ministries have director generals at a provincial level, who then have directors at a district level, who then have directors at a sub-district level. So it's creating this hierarchy of administration. But then we've thrown in to the mix governors, right? The 4 provinces in Kurdistan each have a governor. What does the governor do? Who's decided where the authority of the governor begins and where it ends? It's ambiguous. It's ambiguous because we don't have a constitution. And it's ambiguous because it creates, then depends on the governor how engaged they want to be. Yeah. The Director General of Agriculture in a province, whether it's Erbil, Duhok, Sleymania or Halabja, has 2 bosses. The governor and the ministry that they are part of. Chaos. We don't need more chaos.
So you need a clear-cut division.
We have enough chaos. We have enough chaos in this country. We don't need administrative chaos. Yeah. We need a clear delineation of authority and competencies at a regional level, at a provincial level, at a district level, at a sub-district level. So again, just like how I'm a firm believer and advocate for decentralization at a federal level, we need real decentralization here within the Kurdistan region.
How do you view the prospects of codifying this division of competencies within a...
So again, we need a constitution for this, and this has been under discussion for probably the last 10, 12 years now. And there was a time when the discussions were going very well. A very competent committee was formed and many people were engaged and a lot of discussions were had. And then there were a couple of sticking points, which is normal, that kind of prohibited us from, or limited us from being able to really present this constitution. Yeah. And then there was all kinds of political events that has also contributed to delaying this process. But if we want to address the issue of administration for good and have an administration that is good, have an administration that the public can see who's in charge of what, then we need a constitution, and that constitution needs to be clear in authorizing which entity is in charge of what. Because right now, there is enough ambiguity in the system for blame to be apportioned.
So the challenge is to transform ambiguity into unity in diversity.
To transfer ambiguity into a product.
Indeed.
Right? It doesn't have to be unity, but it has to be clear, right? And it has to be implementable. There is no point passing a constitution that is impossible to implement just because it looks good on a piece of paper.
Understood, yes.
Right? We have to pass a constitution that is realistic, applies to Kurdistan within the framework of Iraq, and ultimately is translatable, understandable, and implementable.
Wonderful, yeah. Well, in that spirit, I think I can open the floor for questions. One question at a time, please. First, second, third, fourth. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Mohammed Sharif, University of Kurdistan, Holier. Karqubat, yesterday the president of Kurdistan, Nechirvan Barzani, mentioned that the effort in Baghdad is towards more centralization. And before him, Sayyid Ammar al-Hakim maybe inadvertently stressed two words in Arabic. He said, al-Iqlim wal-Markaz. Markaz means central, so he very clearly made it clear that there is an effort towards centralization. And this morning, a member of the Iraqi parliament, a Kurdish member of the Iraqi parliament, Dr. Muthanna, mentioned how he had mentioned that salaries had been denied to Kurdistan, and this was the starvation of Kurdistan, and how the Speaker of the Iraqi parliament had omitted this in the proceedings of the Iraqi parliament. I think my question to you is, do you think by establishing another layer of government, a federal council, will produce or generate any change? Because I believe that there's a fundamentally flawed conceptual lack of understanding of federalism in Arab Iraq. They do not understand what federalism is. They do not, and they have no intention of implementing federalism. So even by establishing a federal council, do you think this will solve the problem? Very clearly, they do believe in centralization. Thank you very much.
Shall we go one by one?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes.
No, it is not going to solve the issue of federalism and understanding federalism. And the Federal Council is not intended to solve the question of federalism. The Federal Council is intended to create balance and to create a check against the rule of the majority. It is designed to prevent a piece of legislation from being passed by the majority that undermines the minority. That is a very different question than understanding the principles and tenets of federalism. And with this, Professor, if you'll allow me to disagree with you, everybody understands what federalism is. But just because they understand it doesn't mean they want to implement it. Our Shiite partners in Iraq, when in 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7 were strong proponents of federalism. They were coming up with ideas about creating either a mega province, a mega region in the south, 9 provinces, right, or breaking up the Shiite south into multiple federal regions. This sounded good at a time when maybe they were slightly insecure about the future. But then when many of our colleagues and friends and partners from the various Shiite political parties got into real authority, that's when it's like, interesting. Why should we devolve this? with our Sunni brothers and sisters, it was the complete opposite. In 03, 4, 5, 6, they were the ones that were dead against federalism. They believed in a strong center. They believed that Iraq has to be ruled by a strong central government. Now they are the ones thinking, oh, shucks, we should have, we had a chance back then to support federalism, but they didn't. I remember once Mam Jalal had this conversation with Tariq al-Hashimi, who was vice president at the time. He's like, Tariq, why do you keep supporting a strong central government when you know you will never be in that strong central government again? He said, Mam Jalal, you're right. My head is telling me to go with federalism, but my heart can't let go of a strong center. So I think we've seen the evolution. Parties that wanted federalism in the early days in the post-liberation period now are reluctant to give more authority to the regions, whereas parties who initially were proponents of a strong center now are begging for decentralization. What is encouraging to me is that federalism is no longer a Kurdish demand. You speak to Basrawis, they want federalism as much as we do. You speak to Anbaris, they want federalism as much, if not more, than we do. Where we have, I would say as Kurdistan, where we have not been effective is translating our desires for decentralization beyond the wishes of Kurds. And federalism has been painted in Iraq as a Kurdish project, a Kurdish-American conspiracy to divide the country, the Biden plan, all of this. It is not. It is a system to govern better. That is why we want federalism, and that is why many provinces in other parts of the country now also are pushing for federalism.
Wonderful. The next question, I believe, was the gentleman in the back. Yes? Yes. We have so many questions, but we only have 5 minutes, so I hope...
زۆر سپاس دەستان خۆش بێ بۆ ڕوونکردنەوەکانی جەنابی جێگری سەرۆکوەزیران. لە ڕاستیان من دوو پرسیارم هەیە کاک قوباد. یەکەم ئەو ئەنجومەنە فیدراڵیی کە بە دەستور لە مادەی 65 دەستوری عێراق هاتووە ئەبوایە لە ناو دەستور سەلاحیات و مەهاماتی ڕوون بگرایێتەوە بۆ ئەوەی ئەو چێک باڵانسەی کە جەنابە باسی ئەەکەی ئەمە بێتە دی لە ڕاستیە. ئەمە ڕۆیایەکی زۆر گرنگە کە بەداخەوە لە دەستور نییە جێ هەڵراوە بۆ یاسا. ئایا چۆن ئەتوانین پرسیارەکە ئەمەیە چۆن ئەتوانین یاسایەک کە پەرلەمان دای بنێت بتوانێت مەجلیسێک بێنێتەکایەوە کە ئەم باڵانسە لە داهاتوی عێراقا مسۆگەر بکە. پرسیاری دووەمم تایبەتە بە هەرێمی کوردستان و دەستوری هەرێمی کوردستان کە ئەمە مەهامی ئێوەی نوخبەی سیاسی کوردستانە کە ئێمە چیدی بێ دەستور نەبین بۆ ئەوەی هەم کاتەکانی هەڵبژاردنمان هەمیش مؤسساتمان گەشە بکاوە هەمیش بتوانین هاوڵاتی کوردستان بزانێت کەی هەڵبژاردنە و کەی دەنگ ئەدات و لایەنە سیاسیەکان بە پێی دۆخی خۆیان هەڵبژاردن دوان نەخەن و پێشی نەخەن. زۆر سپاس.
بورە لە پرسیاری دووهەمت باش تێنەگەیشتە.
پرسیاری دووەم بمبورە. پرسیاری دووەم ئەمە یعنی چی کراوە بۆ ئەوەی ئیدی ئێمە بێ دەستور نەبین دەستورێکمان هەبێت لە هەرێمی کوردستان کە بۆ ئەوەی مەواعیدی ئینتیخابات بۆ ئەوەی مؤسسات لە پەنایە گەشە بکە بۆ ئەوەی سراعاتی سیاسی لە ژێر سایەیە بە هێمنی بەڕێوە بچێت دەستورمان هەبێ. یعنی چیتان کردووە و لە دانوستانی خۆتان لە نێوان لایەنە سیاسیەکان.
سپاس بۆ هەردوو پرسیارت. وەڵامی یەکەمم قورسە ئەنجومەنی نوێنەران ئەبێ قانونێک دەرکا قانونێک پەسەندکە کە لە نەتیجە سەلاحەتی خۆی کەمەکاتەوە. چکەن ئەمە قورسە بەڵام ئەگەر ئیرادەیەکی سیاسی هەبێ خۆ ئەنجومەنی نوێنەران لە کێ پێکاتووە؟ ئەنجومەنی نوێنەران لەو حیزبانە پێکاتون کە بەشدار بوون لە هەڵبژاردن و بەشدارن لە حکوومەت و بەشدارن لە بیئە سیاسیەکە و بەشدارن لە هاوپەیمانیەتیەکان. بۆیە ئەگەر بە نیەتێکی دروستەوە بین لە کێشەکانی بەڕێوەبردن شیان بکەینەوە پێم وایە ئەگەر کۆدەنگیەکی سیاسی دروست بکەین ئەو کاتە قانونێک ئەتوانین قانونێک تێپەڕێنین کە هەم ئەنجومەنەکە ئەهێنێتە دی هەم سەلاحەتەکانی تەحدیدەکە بەس دیسانەوە شەرحی ئەوێ ئیرادەی ئەوێ و پێویستی بەوەیە کە ڕاستگۆ بین لەگەڵ خۆمان و لەگەڵ خەڵکی خۆمان کە ئەم نظامەی کە ئێستا ئەم وڵاتە بەڕێوە ئەبا کەم و کورتی هەیە. سەربارەت بە پرسیاری دووهەمت پێم وایە مناقەشەکان بەردەوام بوونە. ئەم کابینەیە دەستی پێکرا و دوای لەپڕ نەمایەوە بەڕێز سەرۆکی پەرلەمان پێشوو بەڕێزی لێرەیە خۆی زۆر هەوڵیدا بۆ ئەوەی ئەم مەوزوعە بجوڵێنێت. پێم وایە بەس نەچووە بچێت، پێم وایە 85% کێشەکان چارەسەر بوونە. بازەم 3-4 مەوزوع هەن کە ئاسان نین چارەسەریان، بەڵام قابلی حەلن. پێم وایە بۆ کابینەی داهاتوو ئینشاءڵڵا دوای ئینتیخابات ئینشاءڵڵا دوای ئەمانە ئەتوانن هەستن بەو ئەرکەی. پێم وایە ئەو لیژنەی کە هەشە لیژنەیەکی ڕێکوپێکە و پڕە لە خەڵکی شارەزا لە بوارەکانە و قابلی ئەوەیە تێیپەڕێنین و
She was the third.
we need gender equality in
the third
questioning as well. So.
And I've been raising my hand all day and nobody gave me a chance. So كقبض سپاس که با چانس که بتوان پرسیاری کلی کنم با کردی لیتکم و کو کسی که خلقی سلیمانی باسی هیرارکی اداریت کرد. برای جنابت سلیمانی کی برپرسه؟ جنابت حزب حاکمکی، جنابت سلیمانی زونی سوزا و جنابت لحکومتی. يعني أجر بروينا دواوك ومشكلة كوليرا كهبو لسليماني كتشوينا نيوزا ولا نا جزيرة باسي كوليرا كرا ك أو نخوشية كعادة بارامتر يعني بيم خوشني وكو خلق سليماني من أو بلام بلان بارامتري كي باشنية لسر هج شوينة كأو نخوشية تابلاو بيتواني لعين لكاتيكا كمديريتي الصحة السليمانية publicly الله أما نخوشيكي ورزية وكدو صال consecutive تكرار بو بيو 4 صال أم نخوشية زي يعني جنابت بكو رولي خوت لنا حكومتها وكو رولت لنا وحزبك جاري كتير الله مفروض يعني سليماني زونا صوزكية أم كيشانك درسته بيكي كي أنك لوانه هل هستكم كيشيكي زور جوريه ك هاوڵاتیەکان یعنی هێشتا نەزانی سەبەبەکە چییە، نازانی سەبەبی ئەم نەخۆشیە چییە. یەکێکەڵێ ئاوی تێکەڵاو بوونی، یەکێکەڵێ لە ئێرانەوە سەوزەکە ناشۆرێتەوە، یعنی سیتیەکانە کە ئاوەکانی پیسە. یعنی مەوزوعێکی مهمە وەکو جەنابەت کە تەسەورەکەم خەمخۆرێکی سلێمانی مفروض ئەوجابەتان هەبێ بۆ خەڵکو کە چی کراوە پلان کراوە کە ئەمە تکرار نەبێتەوە وە بەرپرسێتی شارەکان کێن. ئەوە سوالەکەی منە زیاتر لەم هێرارکیە.
پرسیار لە جەناب بتوانێت من جوابی پرسیاری کۆلێرا بدەمەوە یان پرسیاری ئیدارەی سلێمانی بدەمەوە؟
ئیدارەی سلێمانی وە لە حاڵەتی
کۆلێرا شتێک نییە کە تەنها حەسر بێت لە سلێمانی. کۆلێرا لە هەموو عێراق، لە هەموو کوردستان، لە هەموو لە جیهان، لە زۆر وڵات خەڵک تووشی ئەو نەخۆشیە هەیە. ئەم نەخۆشیە لە دەرەنجامی ئاوی پیسە، ینی نەخۆشیەکە پەیوەندی بە ئاوەوە هەیە. بەس ڕەنگ بە خەڵکی تر هەبن پسپۆرتر بن لە من کە بتوانن ینی لە ڕۆیەکی زانستیەوە باسی کۆلێرەتان بۆ بکەن و بۆ هەیە و ئامارەکانیشتان پێشکەشکەن کە ئەم کۆلێرایی کە ئەم ساڵ بڵاو بۆەوە تەنها لە سلێمانی نەبوو، بەعکسەوە شوێنی تر هەبووە لە کوردستان کە ڕێژەی توشبووی کۆلێرا و ڕێژەی بڵین حتا مردنیش لە کۆلێراوە زۆر زیاتر بوون لە سلێمانی. بەڵام نامەوێت لێرە شارچەتی بکەم و بڵێم بەڵام ئەم شارە و باشە و ئەم شارە خراپە. بەڵام بەداخەوە نەریتێک پێیا بووە کە کوردستان شامی شەریفە تەنها سلێمانی نەبێت. نەریتێک پێیا بووە کە کارەبا لە هەموو کوردستانە هەیە بەس لە سلێمانیان نییە. نەریتێک پێیا بووە کە هەموو جادەکانی کوردستان زۆر باشە و تەنها لە سلێمانی خراپە. ئەمە میدیا، سۆشەڵ میدیا، سیاست، لایەنەکان هەموو جێوێکیان دروست کردووە کە ناحەقیەکیان کردووە بەرامبەر بە شارە حیاتەکە کە ئەو ناحەقیەش ئێمە نەمانتوانیەوە وەک پێویست ڕوبەڕووی ئەو ڕێکلام و دیعایانە بینەوە کە بەرامبەر بە سلێمانی کراوە ئەوەی کە بەرپرسە لە بەڕێوەبردنی سلێمانی حکوومەتی هەرێمی کوردستانە. بەڵام ئەوەی کە خەلەلەکە هەیە ئەو خەلەلە بوو کە لە پێشتر ئاماژەم پێدا کە فەوزایەک هەیە، فەوزایەکی سیاسی و ئیداری هەیە، تێکەڵاویەکی دەسەڵاتەکانە هەیە کە ئەمە جەنابی وەزیری ناوخۆ لێرە دانیشتووە محافزەکان سەر بە وەزیری ناوخۆن. بۆ محافظ سەر بە وەزیری ناوخۆ بێ، بۆ قایمقامێک سەر بە وەزارەتی ناوخۆ بێ، پۆلیس و ئاسایش و شتیوا بە سەر بە وەزیری ناوخۆ بێ. بەس منطقی تیان نییە تۆ محافظێک کە هەڵە بژێردرێت لە نەتیجەی پرۆسەیەکی ئینتیخابی ڕەبت بکرێتەوە بە ئەنجومەنی وەزیران یان هەڵی وەشێنرەوە و جەنابی وەزیری ناوخۆ ئەتوانێ محافظی هەموو محافظەکان بێ یان دەسەڵاتێک بدە بە محافظەکان کە ئەتوانن ئەو کاتە واضحە بێ کێ ئیداریەن بەرپرسیارە لە بەڕێوەبردننی ئەو محافظەیە ئەوەیە کە پێم وایە لێڵیەکی دروست کردووە و گومانێکی دروست کردووە و بووەتە دەرفەتێک بۆ ئەوەی ئەم جۆرە ڕەخنانە ئاراستە بکرێن.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Unfortunately,
The music is playing.
So it's telling us to stop. So I believe we had an interesting mix of questions nevertheless, and a very interesting topic to discuss. I'm certain His Excellency will be available on other occasions.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrea.
So thank you for this opportunity and for the very interesting discussion.
Spas.